Hello. Don't forget to subscribe and keep listening for more chilling tales. Now let's dive in. I received a scary story from Alex one rainy evening while sitting in my dimly lit apartment. He called me out of the blue, his voice low and urgent, as though he couldn't wait another moment to share what he had discovered. "You have to hear this," Alex began, and from that moment, I was hooked. He narrated a chilling tale that took place in a remote Romanian village he had visited a few years ago, a place buried in shadows and steeped in an eerie silence. This is the story he told me. I arrived at the village of Village Ursi late in the afternoon, just as the sun was beginning to set behind the Carpathian Mountains. The place looked like it had been forgotten by time. Old wooden houses with sagging roofs and peeling paint lined a single dirt road that wound through the center of the settlement. Smoke curled lazily from a few chimneys, and the faint smell of burning wood mixed with damp earth hung in the air. The villagers didn't seem to welcome strangers. They watched me from behind half-closed shutters and narrow doorways as I made my way toward the small inn that was the only place to stay for miles. The innkeeper, a stout man with a thick mustache and weary eyes, barely spoke as he handed me a key. He seemed anxious, his gaze darting toward the windows as though he expected something, or someone, to appear. That evening, as I sat alone in the tiny dining area, an old woman approached me. She wore layers of tattered clothing and carried a bundle of dried herbs. Without asking, she sat across from me and leaned in close. "You should leave," she whispered in heavily accented English. "This is not a place for outsiders." "Why?" I asked, intrigued but not yet frightened. Her cloudy eyes seemed to pierce through me as she said, "The Headless Bride rides tonight." I laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of local superstition or a way to scare away tourists, but her expression remained grave. "She comes for those who wander the roads after dark," the old woman continued. "Those who see her never return the same, or never return at all." Curiosity got the better of me. That night, instead of heeding her warning, I decided to explore the village. The streets were eerily quiet, and the only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath my boots. The full moon cast long, distorted shadows, making the already creepy atmosphere even more unsettling. As I walked, I noticed an old church at the edge of the village, its spire silhouetted against the night sky. Drawn by an inexplicable urge, I approached it. The building was in ruins, its doors hanging ajar and its windows shattered. Inside, I found rows of crumbling pews and a cracked altar. But what caught my attention was a painting on the far wall, a depiction of a wedding ceremony, except the bride had no head. Her veil floated in the air as though her head should have been there, and her hands clutched a bouquet of wilted flowers. A sudden chill ran down my spine. I turned to leave but froze when I heard the faint sound of hooves echoing through the night. At first, I thought it might be my imagination, but the sound grew louder, closer. My heart pounded as I stepped outside and scanned the empty streets. Then I saw her. Riding atop a skeletal, black horse was a figure in a flowing wedding gown, the fabric tattered and stained with dark streaks. Where her head should have been, there was nothing, just an empty space above her neck. She held the reins tightly in one hand and a glowing lantern in the other. The light from the lantern illuminated the fog around her, casting an otherworldly glow. I ducked behind a broken fence, trying to stay out of sight. My breath came in shallow gasps as I watched her ride slowly through the village, her horse's hooves striking the ground with an eerie rhythm. She stopped near the church and turned her headless form toward the doorway, as though sensing my presence. A low, guttural sound emanated from her, like a growl mixed with a wail. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. The horse began to move again, its hollow eyes glowing faintly as it stepped closer to where I was hiding. Finally, the fear jolted me into action. I bolted, sprinting back toward the inn. The sound of galloping hooves pursued me, growing louder and louder until it felt like she was right behind me. I didn't dare look back. I reached the inn, slammed the door shut, and locked it, my chest heaving as I collapsed against the wall. The innkeeper appeared, his face pale. "You saw her," he said flatly. I nodded, unable to speak. He muttered something under his breath and lit a bundle of sage, waving it around the room. "She's marked you," he said. "You must leave before sunrise." I wanted to ask him what he meant, but I was too shaken to form coherent words. That night I barely slept. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind outside made me jump. I kept expecting to see her lantern light shining through the window. At the first light of dawn, I left the village. As I drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw her standing at the edge of the road, her lantern raised as if bidding me farewell or warning me never to return. Alex finished his story with a nervous chuckle, but his eyes betrayed his unease. "I haven't been the same since," he admitted. "Sometimes, I still hear the sound of hooves at night, even though I'm thousands of miles away from that cursed place." His words stayed with me long after we hung up. I couldn't shake the feeling that his story wasn't just a tale to scare me. It was a warning, and sometimes, late at night, when the world is silent and the shadows grow long, I think I can hear the faint echo of hooves in the distance. I received an email from David with his story, and as I read it, a chill ran down my spine. He titled it simply, "The Curse of the Iele." I arrived in the remote village of Gurarakuloi late in the afternoon. The place was small and cloaked in an unsettling quiet, with cobblestone streets that seemed to echo with the footsteps of long-gone travelers. The houses leaned into one another, their wooden frames blackened with age and weathered by time. As I wandered the village, the locals avoided my gaze, their faces etched with caution and fear. I knew why. They were afraid of what I was here to find. The Iele, ethereal beings that haunted the forests, the subject of whispers and warnings. Some said they were fairies, others called them demons, but everyone agreed they were dangerous. When I asked about them, the villagers crossed themselves, muttering prayers or pretending they hadn't heard me. Only one old man, sitting on a rickety stool outside the tavern, dared to speak. "They are not of this world," he said, his voice trembling. "If you see them, you must not join their dance, no matter how tempting it seems. Look away. Run if you can." I should have listened, but I didn't come all this way to turn back. That night, armed with only a flashlight and a growing sense of dread, I entered the forest. The path twisted and turned, the trees growing denser with every step. My flashlight's beam flickered, cutting through the mist that clung to the ground like a living thing. The air was unnaturally cold, and the sounds of the village faded until there was nothing but the rhythmic crunch of my boots on the forest floor. Then it began. A melody, haunting, beautiful, and otherworldly. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, wrapping around me like an invisible thread, pulling me deeper into the woods. My heart raced as I followed it, my legs moving as if they had a will of their own. I reached a clearing bathed in silver moonlight, and there they were, the Iele, a circle of women, their hair long and shimmering like liquid moonlight, danced with an elegance that seemed impossible. Their feet hovered just above the ground, and their movements were so perfectly synchronized that it was mesmerizing. Couldn't look away. My flashlight slipped from my hand, the beam extinguished as it hit the ground. I stepped closer, drawn by the music and the dancers' ethereal beauty. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and fascination. Then one of them turned toward me. Her face was both breathtakingly beautiful and deeply unsettling. Her eyes glowed like embers, and her smile was sharp and predatory. She raised a hand, beckoning me to join them. I don't remember deciding to move, but my feet carried me forward. The moment I crossed the threshold of their circle, everything changed. The music became frenzied, chaotic, and the dancers' movements grew wild and erratic. They surrounded me, their laughter sharp and cruel, their hands cold as death brushing against my skin. It was unbearable. My vision blurred. My body ached as if it had been torn apart and put back together wrong. I tried to scream, but no sound came. Their hands grasped at me, pulling me into their dance, and I felt my very soul slipping away. Then, everything went dark. I woke at the edge of the forest, the first rays of dawn filtering through the trees. My clothes were torn, my body covered in scratches, and my head pounded with a pain unlike anything I'd ever felt. The villagers found me not long after, sitting in the dirt and muttering fragments of that cursed song. They wouldn't speak to me after that. They only crossed themselves and hurried away. For months I tried to forget, but the melody haunted me. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I would hear it, faint and distant, calling to me. I fought the urge to follow it, to return to that cursed forest. But the pull was always there, growing stronger with each passing day. Finally, I gave in. I packed my things and returned to Gura Rakului. This time, I thought I was prepared. I carried salt, iron, and a small vial of holy water. The villagers begged me not to go, calling me mad, but I couldn't stay away. The forest was darker than I remembered, the silence more oppressive. The melody came sooner this time, as if the Iele were waiting for me. It was sharper now, cutting through me like a blade. I followed it, my heart pounding, my hands clutching the iron knife I had brought. When I reached the clearing, the Iele were there. Their circle was tighter, their movements more frenzied. This time, their faces were visible from the start, each one more horrifyingly beautiful than the last. They didn't beckon me, they didn't need to. I stepped into their circle without hesitation. The moment I did, they lunged. Their hands were icy and burning all at once, their laughter a cacophony that filled my head. The holy water spilled uselessly to the ground, and the salt was swept away by an unseen wind. The iron knife grew searingly hot in my hand, forcing me to drop it. I was helpless. They dragged me into their dance, their touch twisting and breaking something inside me. My vision blurred, and my body spun, weightless and fragile, as if I were no longer entirely human. The world dissolved into a haze of light and sound, and I felt myself becoming part of their song. I don't know how long it lasted. Hours? Days? When I woke again, I was lying in the clearing, the sun high above me. My body was intact, but something was missing, something I couldn't name. The villagers refused to look at me when I returned, their whispers following me like shadows. And the melody, always the melody, played in the back of my mind, a constant reminder that I was no longer free. Now, even miles away from that cursed forest, I hear it, faint and distant, but growing louder. I know the Iele are waiting for me, and this time I don't think I'll come back. I received a message about a place I should never go. It was an email from a friend, something he had shared in the dead of winter, and I'll never forget the chilling words in his subject line. Strigoi from Village Ursi. The village of Ursi was tucked far away in the mountains, surrounded by dense, endless forests and shrouded in an unnatural silence. The villagers there lived as though in isolation, their homes constructed from the sturdy wood of the surrounding trees, their streets narrow and winding, hidden beneath the weight of snow that blanketed everything in white. The place seemed caught between two worlds, the present and the ancient, untouched by time. I had heard the stories before of the Strigoi, the restless spirits of the dead who returned from their graves to haunt the living. But there was something different about Ursi. The stories here were not just legends or warnings. They were a warning to stay away, whispered with fear. When I arrived in Ursi, the village felt like it was sleeping. There was no one around when I entered. The streets were nearly empty, the windows of the houses dark, as if the people had gone into hiding. When I made my way to the local inn, the innkeeper barely greeted me. He gave me a key to a room without saying a word, and I could feel his eyes following me as I walked up the stairs. I was there to understand the truth. I had heard rumors about the Strigoi and was determined to uncover the mystery. It wasn't long before the locals began to notice my presence, and as soon as I asked questions about the village's history, I saw the fear in their eyes. They spoke in hushed voices when I mentioned the Strigoi, quickly changing the subject or walking away. It wasn't until the evening, when an elderly woman sitting by the hearth of the inn finally spoke to me. Her voice trembled as she began to tell me a story I would never forget. Strigoiul, she whispered, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one was listening, was once a man, a hunter, a giant of a man, strong as the beasts he hunted. He lived here many years ago, but when he died, he didn't stay dead. He came back, and every winter, when the snow covers the land, he returns. He seeks one soul, always one soul to take. I didn't fully believe her. How could I? But I was curious more than ever, and after hearing the woman's warning, I couldn't resist the pull. That night, when the village fell into silence under a thick layer of snow, I decided to venture out. I wrapped myself in layers of clothing, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped into the cold, dark night. The path leading out of the village was barely visible, the snow drifting over the ground and swallowing any trace of where I walked. The trees loomed on either side, their branches heavy with snow, creating a canopy that shut out the moonlight. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up with every step. As I walked deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, sharper. My breath fogged in front of me, and the silence felt suffocating. The crunch of my boots in the snow was the only sound, until it came. Faint at first, a low, eerie sound that seemed to drift through the trees like the wind. But there was no wind. There was only that song. I paused, straining to listen. It was a haunting melody, distant yet familiar. It wrapped around me like an invisible hand, pulling me toward it. I knew then that I had to find the source. I stepped forward, my legs moving almost against my will, drawn by the sound. The trees thinned out ahead, and I found myself in a clearing, bathed in the pale light of the moon. And there, in the center of the clearing, I saw it. The figure. At first, I thought it was just a shadow cast by the trees, but then it moved, slowly, deliberately. The tall, cloaked figure stepped into the light, its presence impossible to ignore. It was massive, towering over everything in the clearing, its face obscured by a hood. But I could feel its eyes on me, burning through the dark like two embers. The air around me grew colder, and the sound of that song grew louder, as if the figure was summoning it from the depths of the earth itself. I stood frozen, my heart pounding in my chest. The figure didn't speak at first, but I could feel its presence pressing against me, suffocating me. The eyes, those burning eyes, never left mine. And then I heard the voice. It wasn't human. It was deep and guttural, like the sound of something ancient, something that had been buried for centuries. "You shouldn't have come," it said, its voice sending a shiver down my spine. "The Strigoi always returns." And then, without warning, it lunged. I didn't even have time to react. The figure moved with such speed, it was impossible to comprehend. Its hands were cold as death, and when they touched me, I felt like my body was being torn apart. My legs buckled beneath me, and I fell to the snow, struggling to breathe. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Sharp, searing, as if my soul was being dragged out of my body. The song continued to play in my head, louder and louder, until it drowned out everything else. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. Couldn't move, couldn't escape. The Strigoi was there, its hands cold and burning at the same time, pulling me into its grasp. But then, just as quickly as it had come, it was gone. The clearing was empty, the song fading into silence, and I was left alone, trembling in the snow. I don't remember how long I lay there, but when I finally managed to get up, the village was still asleep. The cold had a strange, oppressive weight to it, and I knew then that I was no longer in control of my own actions. The Strigoi had marked me, and I could feel it in every part of me, a part of its curse now woven into my soul. The next morning I tried to leave. The villagers didn't speak to me. They wouldn't look me in the eye. As I made my way back to the inn to gather my things, I noticed footprints in the snow, large, animal-like prints leading from the graveyard, disappearing into the trees. But there were no signs of any person, no sign of anyone who had left them. I left Village Ursi that day, never to return. But even now, I hear the song sometimes, late at night, distant but clear. I know the Strigoi still waits for me. It never truly leaves, and I can feel it growing closer every winter, as the snow falls once more. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an eerie tale. Let us know where you're listening from in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Stay spooky, and thank you for being part of our haunting journey.